Good evening. This is the Point of News this Saturday evening. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole.
And my name is John Alanamu. Lots lined up for you tonight, including that discussion that should be happening across the country, quite frankly, Yvonne, about disarmament and amnesty.
Right.
That's something we're going to be discussing tonight on The Other Kenya, with quite a number of perspectives on the same. Given that this man over here, Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri, made an amnesty call.
Right.
What's the success of it? So we drill down into the numbers with respect to that and see whether that is a strategy that we can use going forward.
Right. Controversial though it may be in international law, he called for amnesty. That period is now expired, and we'll take a look at what results it has achieved. How many have come forward? How many firearms or weapons have been brought forward? And most importantly, how much intelligence has been gleaned from some of these people coming forward? An alternative tool in the fight against terror, but is it working? And most importantly, how can it work better is what I think your discussion will be taking a look at.
Yeah,
right?
most definitely. Of course, that discussion coming up after the first break on KTN Weeend Prime, but we've got lots of stories, including that statement from Majority Leader Aden Duale on the same with respect to the war on terror. Is he engaging in doublespeak? We'll find out after these brief highlights.
To expose all the members, the financiers and sympathizers of Al-Shabaab within the next 1 month.
I'm also actually curious to get that list.
We owe nobody any form of a list.
Master of doublespeak, Duale changes tune on the promised terror sympathizers list.
Make a rope which they used to get down from the cells, and then to also scale up the wall.
Not so maximum after all. 3 dangerous prisoners escaped from committee prison.
A young and beautiful lady was not deterred to come all the way from Europe to Africa here in Kenya.
Blessed Irene Stefani, world watchers as Catholics honor nun known for mercy.
Na kama wewe tu, sio ile mnasema kwa historia ati waya imekutana na waya. No, ni mtu.
And the lightning wants to marry me. A clan's special relationship with nature. Thank you for joining us on the bulletin. Tonight, our sign language interpreter is Meresha Owiti. Let's start off tonight with that daring escape of 3 prisoners serving life sentences from the committee maximum prison. Now, the 3 who were convicted of robbery with violence cut the grills to their cells and tied blankets and mosquito nets to make a rope which they used to scale the walls of the highly guarded prison.
Prison authorities who could not explain the security lapse say a blackout and heavy rains may have helped the prisoners execute their well laid out plan. Here's Rita Tinina with the details.
The committee maximum security prison, home to high-risk inmates, the country's most guarded prison. But 3 inmates outdid the maximum security here. In a well-planned escape mission, Joseph Kenyanjui Getao, Isaac Karanja Mwangi and John Kamau Gadhoni made a daring 1:30 a.m. escape from prison.
They cut the grills from within the place where they were sleeping. And having cut the grills, then they had made a rope with the blankets that they use. And we also give them mosquito nets, just because the area also has mosquitoes. So the prisoners are provided with mosquito nets. So they used that to make a rope, which they used to get down from the cells, and then to also scale up the wall.
The 3 escapees had been condemned to death, but their sentences were later commuted to life by then President Mwai Kibaki. Joseph Kenyanjui Getao from Kiambu has been at the prison for the past decade. He was convicted on robbery with violence charges. Isaac Karanja from Thika has spent the past 8 years at the prison after being convicted of robbery with violence in 2007. Joseph Kenyanjui and Isaac Karanja escaped from cell number 24. In cell number 20, John Kamau Gadhoni from Nyandarua was on the same mission. He was sentenced to hang on 2 counts, robbery with violence and indecent assault of a female, before his sentence was commuted to life. What prison authorities cannot explain is how the 3 escaped from the high-risk section of the prison, Block D.
There may have been a lapse in security, which we have actually been investigating from that hour. We've even called in the police. They are all over. And all those people who are in those sections, we are all going to interrogate all of them. And whoever will be found to have lapsed as far as the security is concerned, definitely the law will take its own course.
The inmates not only managed to escape from Block D, they did so just next to a watchtower.
There is a watchtower. Maybe the one you saw that is near is not being used. You could see new towers and old towers. And at that time, it was raining heavily. And there was also a blackout. So they could also have taken advantage of that situation at that moment.
Committee Maximum Security Prison was built in the 1950s, and some 2,000 inmates are currently serving jail terms here. Prison authorities say the facility is ill-equipped to handle high-risk criminals, some of them convicted of emerging crimes.
We would need to have an electric fence around that. We would need to have the razor wires. We would need, you can see, you can walk up to the prison. We need a buffer zone. So funds are really required.
Prison authorities and the police have launched a manhunt for the fugitives and are warning the public that the 3 are highly dangerous. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Northeastern leaders have said they are not answerable to anyone and should not be put under pressure to give out the list of terror sympathizers they had promised to compile last month. After the Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaiseri demanded to see the list, the Northeastern leaders unapologetically stated they are working with the government in other ways to fight terror. KTN's Samogena reports.
We will, with immediate effect, commence to identify them, to document them, and to expose all the members, the financiers, and sympathizers of Al-Shabaab within the next 1 month.
That was 5th April 2015, 3 days after the Garissa College terror attack. Although some politicians immediately pressured Duale to expose the sympathizers instead of waiting for a whole month, the rest of the country have been waiting with bated breath for that expose. When the 30 days expired, the Interior Cabinet Secretary wondered where the list was.
I'm also actually curious to get that list because 30 days really have elapsed, so we want to see that list.
And that triggered a surprise turnaround from Duale.
List tutalete kesho na hakuna list tutalete 1 year from now.
We are not playing politics. We are not answerable to anybody. We owe nobody any form of a list.
The leaders who had vowed to expose agents of the terror organization Al-Shabaab from within their community now claim the whole issue has been politicized. That despite the 30-day promise to make the expose, they are not answerable to anyone.
Hakuna siku sisi tumesema tutaleta list ya Al-Shabaab. Kwani sisi tunajua hawa? Kwani tunajua?
And we will, with immediate effect, commence to identify them, to document them, and to expose all the members, the financiers, and sympathizers of Al-Shabaab within the next 1 month.
Being elected leaders and more so being the majority leader in the National Assembly, Duale and his allies are presumably answerable to the Kenyan citizens. But he disagrees.
As a country, we come together united to fight Al-Shabaab. Let us not trivialize the war against terror. Let us not politicize the war against terror.
Sisi hatuna jukumu
la kumwambia Kaiseri ama mwanasiasa mwingine tumefanya nini, tumepita wapi kuhakikisha kwamba Northeastern iko secure.
Yeye alipewa roadmap, kazi ya kufanya, hiyo ndio kazi yake. Akunje shati na afanye kazi, na mdomo wanasiasa awaachilie kwa wanasiasa.
In other mature democracies with Kenya's kind of electoral model, the National Assembly Majority Leader is a powerful figure whose every statement is almost akin to government policy. But Duale's remarks have now left a big question mark as to which way the wind is really blowing in Kenya. Samugina, KTN.
The highly anticipated ceremony of the beatification of Sister Irene Stefani took place today, and it was a big ceremony, one that brought thousands of pilgrims to Nyeri. President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto were also in attendance, urging all people, regardless of religion and tribe, to emulate the selfless life that the nun lived. Our reporter Sharon Momanyi has been in Nyeri and now brings us this story.
The long-awaited day was finally here, and just as expected, pilgrims and witnesses thronged the venue in thousands. Early Saturday morning and the queue leading into the Dedan Kimathi grounds had stretched into kilometers. Many also traveled from across the world, all eager to witness the historic beatification ceremony of Sister Irene, or as she was fondly referred in Gikondi village, Sister Irene Nyadha Stefani. The ceremony was overseen by Tanzanian Cardinal Polycarp Pengo and the Archbishop of the Catholic Church in Kenya, John Cardinal Njue. President Uhuru Kenyatta attended the ceremony in the company of the First Lady Margaret Kenyatta, former President Mwai Kibaki, Deputy President William Ruto, host Governor Nderitu Gachagua, and Senator Mutahi Kagwe, among a host of other top country officials. A joyful and meditative ceremony it was. Witnesses and the faithful, including the Consolata sisters where she served, also reflected on Sister Irene's life. 3 of her relatives were also in attendance. Sister Irene lived and served in Nyeri between 1915 and 1930, meeting her death through an infection of bubonic plague which she contracted while attending to a patient. Her acts of kindness had the area residents nickname her Nyadha, meaning Mother Full of Mercy. In 1984, the then Bishop of Nyeri Diocese, Caesar Maria Gatimu, opened the diocesan inquest for the beatification of Sister Irene. A similar inquest was opened the following month in Turin, Italy.
Proud to be joy.
Today's ceremony was the culmination of 30 years of thorough investigation and expansive research covering Africa and Europe. Research that verified that the sister also performed miracles as is part of the requirement for one to be beatified.
She, a young and beautiful lady, was not deterred to come all the way from Europe to Africa here in Kenya with one mission. That is, to show the love of God by serving Him in her fellow human beings.
Apud Sanctum Petrum,
Cardinal Pengo, the papal representative at the event, read a Latin letter from Pope Francis I, decreeing Sister Irene Stefani blessed.
Pontificatus nos detestio.
Leaders urged Kenyans to emulate the spirit of selflessness and humility that Sister Irene exuded.
We all who are here today should leave asking ourselves, what is it that we then can also do for our own fellow humankind? What is it that we can do to serve our brother and sister better? What is it that we can do in our individual capacity to show that humility and that compassion in everything that we do?
The hard work, the sacrifice and humility of Sister Stephanie, that going into the future, that we will too unite as the people of Kenya, beyond our villages, beyond our communities, beyond our regions, and have one united, prosperous Kenya.
The story of Sister Nyatha makes us realize that human deeds that transform the world may be rare, but can and should be proposed and privatized.
This is the first beatification ceremony taking place in Africa, as traditionally the ceremonies would take place in Rome. In a move to decentralize such activities, the Catholic Church decided that the Venerable would be beatified in the dioceses where they worshipped. The beatification of Archbishop Oscar Romero is taking place on the same date in San Salvador.
Thank you very much.
Before an excited gathering, President Uhuru Kenyatta later unveiled a plaque in the heart of Nyeri town, made in honor of Sister Irene. As the pilgrims leave the Dedan Kimathi University grounds, Sister Irene Stephanie is now blessed Sister Irene Stephanie, a beatification ceremony in which the resounding message was that of unity of humanity. Sharma Manyi, KTN in Nyeri.
All right, here's another interesting story that you need to pay attention to. Now, you may call it a natural phenomenon, but to a clan in Elgeyo Marakwet, the Kapchebugus clan, lightning is their forefather and, get this, an in-law. It even offered the clan a daughter as a wife to foster the relationship between lightning, yes, lightning, and the clan. Mercy Kandiye met the elders who narrated the special relationship between the Kapchebugus and lightning.
To many, the flash of lightning and the roar of thunder is an indicator that the rain is nigh. But like a tale out of the fiction books is the story of the Kapchebugus clan, a clan who believe that lightning is part of their forefathers. Yes, you heard right, and that the lightning lives in River Mon and got married to one of their daughters.
Na wanasema hiyo radi inafanana aje?
Na kama wewe tu. Sio ile mnasema kwa historia ati waya imekutana na waya. No, ni mtu. Nyinyi mnasema kwa hivyo kwa history ati vile inalia namna hii ati waya au nini? Waya mara wanasema ati choto pariti na choto wiko moto wanakutana ndio wakapiga hiyo ni rati. Hata usiku hapa ukitembea utakuta anafanya nini? Anya soache lemi.
Utakuta radi anafanya?
Ukienda hapa usiku unakuta anafanya analisha ng'ombe yake hapa.
Radi analisha ng'ombe yake?
Hapa nje hivi.
It's a story that has been passed on through generations. The first man whose daughter got married to the lightning was called Kapchebugus. The Kapchebugus daughter and the lightning bore a son who came to the family's rescue during the dry spell.
Sasa huyu mama na mzee wanakaa, anasema sijui hii ng'ombe atakula nini. Ilikuwa kuko yao wanatoa kwa hapa kwa rati, mtoto ya rati. Hivi katogo hivi.
Mtoto alizaliwa na radi?
Hii mtoto ya mtoto yake. Alikuja nyumbani kwa nyanya yake.
Alikuwa anaishi hapo hiyo mtoto hiyo?
Anatoka mtoni hapa. Mahali kwa hapa mtoni, si mimi namwambia wewe saa ile.
Akaleta ukali chenye hata ukikula ishi. Hata nyama ililetwa chenye hata ukikula haiwezi kuisha. Baka yeye aseme nyewe ngoja nirudishe.
Young girls are not allowed to idle around River Mon. They might be taken in as wives by the lightning. But I'm safe, they say. The lightning is aware I'm doing the story. During the clan rituals that are performed beside River Mon, only men with firstborn daughters are allowed.
Hata zamani kwa kama si watoto unaenda kuta hapa ukienda mchana saa 7 tembea tu polepole bila kuongea. Utaona mwanamke ya rati anakaa huko kwa mawe iko hapa. Anaangalia nguo yake, uchawi, anafanya hivi. Na uifanya anaingia kwa maji.
For this particular day, the elders have gathered to solve a land dispute, so we are lucky to get the Kapchebugus story from the horse's mouth, the clan elders themselves.
Shangazi yo yangu nikitinda mimba kwetu. Saa ile nilipozaliwa niliambiwa hii shangazi yangu ungepata bandei. Ilikuwa ameenda kwa radi. Mimi naambia kukaa namna gani? Mlikaa namna gani mpaka naveana shangazi yangu mrembo kama hii kwa radi. Ati alipotea tu.
It's not been a smooth relationship between the Kapchebugus clan and the Lightning after the then forefathers developed pride. But recently, the elders tell me the men in the clan were offered a wife, a daughter of the Lightning. The deal is that one waits beside the river, then the girl will be given to them. But no one has gathered enough courage.
Hakuna mtu alienda mtoni kuchukua, watu wanakopa. Anasema nikifika kofi labda atafanya pambana kama mimi.
Before we leave, the elders say they have to bless us, so we wait. And as the story continues, it is the optimism here that one day one man will be brave enough to go and wait by the river and wait for the promised wife, or rather marry the daughter of Lightning. So if you're a man looking for a hot girl, perhaps it's time to visit the Kapchebugus clan if you can handle the heat from the daughter of Lightning. Marcy Kandie, KTN, Elgeyo Marakwet County.
That's definitely one for the end of year show reel. You should have seen how worried Mercy Kandie was that she'd be married by by the Lightning. Definitely a great story there, and we are chock full tonight with stories like that. And we move from there to another part of the country where last respects for the departed are expressed in so many ways, mostly following religion and traditional practices. And one such ceremony held recently in Luanda village in Vihiga County was one to remember, just like that other story. The deceased had to be taken around the whole town amid song and dance for about 20 kilometers. And as KTN's Lofty Matambo reports, it was more of a wedding than a burial ceremony.
If you think it's a convoy of a certain politician, you are mistaken. This is a special convoy taking a deceased for a burial. Dance, songs and jubilation marking this auspicious occasion. This is according to the doctrine of Mary Akatsa's denomination, Jerusalem Church, which was founded way back in 1986 in Nairobi, Kawangware.
Ilikuwa ule mtoto nimtembeze polepole, step by step, maana yake hata rudi Rwanda tena. Hata rudi kutembea kule alitembeanga tena. Sasa alikuwa anatembea mara ya mwisho akisema bye bye, hakuna nimharakishe.
The convoy covered about 20 kilometers in 2 days. Itumbi residents in Luanda Vihiga turning this morning ritual into a celebration. Itumbi means dancing in Luya language, and a Sukut dance must be present. By the end of day one, the coffin is escorted all the way home with the dance and songs. This particular morning was accompanied by rainfall that left all other vehicles grounded except Mary's car. Her followers were obliged to push it right and left to the podium. According to their teachings and the respect she commands amongst her followers, Mary is not supposed to step on the muddy earth. Thousands of Luanda residents gathered to witness every bit of this burial of its kind. Mary, taking charge of the event, due to her domineering actions, other religious leaders had to leave. Mary orders her followers to sit down on the mud, and they do so without blinking. It seems the turn of her head is powerful enough to stop the music abruptly. Mary has her own special security team which guards her round the clock.
Mimi manamba nilitumwa kuingiza watu wa Mungu kwa gari. Na gari naingiza mlevi, nabeba wasimu, nabeba kila mtu.
The two left many dumbfounded. She had two separate burials to oversee. Here, the widow was dressed in a bridal gown, just like in a wedding, instead of the usual black mourning attire.
640 Luanda.
Though she wears a sad face, she has no choice but to bow to the doctrines of Mary's church. She fears no man. These innocent men receive a number of slaps from Mary for breaching her protocol.
Ningekuwa naomba sadaka, hata watu wa sadaka wangekuwa wamenitoroka. Watu nikunde nitachuna saa yote. Haya, nikisema apande radio, mbeko kwa radio, radio tapasuka, hakuna mchanga kwa radio.
Mary orders the men to align the coffin properly before covering the grave.
Naomba Jumapili peke yake, Jumatatu niko kwa samba. Nisinde nikiomba maombe tamea kwangu kama kundi, alafu Yesu anidharau na Yesu atukane.
According to her, everyone who participated in this is more than satisfied. Indeed, it's a world of mystery. Lofty Matambo, KTN.
Interesting rites and rituals there.
Yes.
Don't say it, by the way.
No, I'm not going to.
Don't, please. I do not come from that part of Western Province. All right. In a week's time, Kenyans will be marking Madaraka Day, a day set aside to commemorate the day Kenya became a republic. Looking back, many are indebted to thousands of people who lost their lives in the struggle for independence. Now, although there have been achievements, one thing is for sure. Many Kenyans still feel that the battle is yet to be won.
Kenyans are still dying in fights over the most valuable asset, and that's land. This Sunday, our political affairs editor, Zubeida Kome, goes back into history to reveal why conflicts surrounding the issue of land are almost impossible to resolve, and why land is the most powerful bait during elections in Kenya. Stay tuned to KTN for a groundbreaking documentary, Ubaradhuli wa Ardhi, which will air at 7 p.m. on KTN Leo Weekendi. Now here is a sneak peek of what to expect.
Wamekuwa wakoloni weusi.
Hii ni wanyang'anyi. Haipi tu.
Kama ni mpwani mwenyewe anaiba kwa wapwani wenziwe, hiyo si mbaya.
Tuwa wakili ni Mkikuyu, nani atakusaidia?
Ikifika wakati wa kuumizwa, uumizwe kwa sababu pia wewe ni Mkikuyu. Utakikani uwe na mali yako.
I am on top of it. I'm on top of that issue.
Poor men will always not have leadership.
Home guards wa siku zile ndio wametawala.
Hautumia tu siasa kulinda mali.
Kama vile wakoloni waliotolewa ndivyo hao wengine watatolewa katika hiyo mambo hayo hapo.
Right, the Mata Hatran 2015 targets to raise over 110 million shillings, up from 96 million that was raised last year. Money which will be used to fund heart surgery operations on at least 250 children from across the country.
Funds raised from the run that was held today in Nairobi will also be used in screening of over 21,000 other children with heart conditions, according to Mata Hospital Chief Executive Dr. Agnes Shege. The money raised from this program exclusively caters for children with heart conditions from poor and needy backgrounds that they were either born with or acquired.
The Mata CEO revealed that the plan in the near future is to hold the event in all parts of the country.
Other Mata Heart Runs today were held simultaneously in Mombasa, Mumias, Machakos and Kisumu.
This is the fourth year running that the Standard Group has partnered with the Mata Hospital to raise funds towards the complex heart surgeries carried out on needy children every year.
Roundabout, Uhuru Highway, City Mortuary, Haile Selassie Roundabout, Bunyala Roundabout.
Went through a lot. First I passed through Mbagathi Hospital. That's when they notified that she has a hole in the heart. Then they refer me to Mata Hospital. So that's when they operate the baby.
So how long has it been since she had her surgery?
It's She was being operated on last year. It was September.
Okay, now since then, Mother Sema, I'm improved.
Yeah, she's improved a lot. She can talk, she can walk, she can run. Yeah, she can eat.
The theme of this year, the Heart of Mercy, beckons us to go back to our roots. We are a Christ-centered hospital. This way, we embody the model of Jesus the healer, who goes beyond feeding the hungry to restoring life.
We are here today, of course, to touch the lives of young people, the young children who have heart conditions, most of which can be prevented here in the city of Nairobi and around the country. I also say we are here today to celebrate the work of children. That children contribute 50% of the funds that is raised for this event is no mean achievement. Asante sana watoto. Clap for yourselves. Finally, I want to challenge then the rest of us who are not children, corporates and individuals alike, that we can do more. The fund wants to raise 110 million shillings this year, and if 50% of that comes from the children, how about if we do 10 times ourselves as corporates and as individuals?
All right. So, some interesting stories tonight, getting a lot of feedback on everything from Mary Akata's interesting burial rites to marrying lightning. And of course, Duale changing tubes.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But we're also getting into another interesting segment on the news tonight, talking about disarmament, talking about amnesty. That amnesty call that was issued by Joseph Kaiseri some weeks back. Now that period has lapsed. Was it effective? Did it achieve the goals that it was supposed to, that it was set out to? We'll be discussing that with a panel of 4 people quite experienced in various aspects of determining whether disarmament and amnesty are the right way to go for Kenya. That after the break on KTN Weeend Prime, the Points of News. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to KTN Weeend Prime. Now, just before John, Alan, Namo and his panelists get into that discussion about disarmament and amnesty, I'd like us to take a look at where we've come in terms of the amnesty call that is now expired by the Cabinet Secretary. Let's start, first of all, by understanding what amnesty is. Now, the Oxford Dictionary defines it as such: an act of forgiveness for past offences, especially to a class of persons as a whole. And usually amnesty is used when countries and societies are faced with conflict and unending war, and policymakers as well as political and community leaders start to question whether their approach to the situation is working or not. And amnesties have been used to encourage combatants and armed groups to lay down their arms and stop the fight. And it is in light of this that on the 14th of last month, that's April, the CS for Interior and Kaiseri issued what was a 10-day amnesty. And this happened after the Garissa attack. 147 people were killed, one of the most grisly terror attacks in the country, especially against youth. These were the phone numbers that were given to young men who had been recruited to Al-Shabaab. There was even an email address, infoken247@gmail.com. Now, this was all to encourage them to come forward, and they were told that those who do not heed the call, which was to report to the county commissioners in Mombasa, Nairobi and Garissa, those who would not heed the call would be treated as criminals. The amnesty call was also given out to parents who felt that their children might have joined some of these extremist groups, and the parents were told, if you do not do this within the 10-day period, then we will consider you as condoning terrorism in the country. Now, of course, After 10 days, it was then extended by another 14 days. Now that was April 24th, 10 days after that. Now there were varied reactions from different leaders, both Christian and Muslim leaders. Now the Christian leaders were very wary of having blanket amnesty for perpetrators of heinous murders that took place in Garissa, and not just there, but in the various other attacks that we had. And not only that, the Muslim leaders on the other end raised the issue of trust between government and the community, and they raised the need for inclusivity. Take a listen to the varied reactions from both Muslim and Christian leaders on the issue.
That the returnees not only surrender to the provincial administrators and security agents, but to also reputable village elders, sheikhs, imams, priests, and officials of human rights organizations.
Kenyans have not seen any clergy involved in radicalization that SUPKEM and other Muslim religious leaders have denounced and publicized and given to government and said these ones are responsible.
So of course it was raising the question that always comes up in international law versus amnesty: no justice, no peace. But let's take a look at the reaction to this on the ground. Now the organizing secretary for the Council of Imams and Preachers of Kenya, Sheikh Khalifa, was quoted as saying no one has surrendered to them. Now this is an important organization because they're heavily involved in combating terrorism. No one had surrendered to them by this time. And they also said, however, that 5 parents had approached them to report their children missing. They believed that many of their children had joined extremist groups. Let's see other reactions and other statements that were made. Now, the Mombasa County Deputy Police Commandant, Kithuka, was quoted in a Standard newspaper article on the 27th of April. He said just 1 militant had surrendered to the Kisauni police station. What were the reasons he gave? Exactly what has been raised, the issue about trust, that there was fear of reprisals from the radical Islamists. And another thing is the fear of the outcome of surrender. This coming from a government official, no less. Now, some of this mistrust may also be due to the fact that those who have been seen to be fighting terrorism, particularly at the coast, have lost their lives. Many remember the killing of Sheikh Idris, who was majorly in the fight against radicalization at the coast. They're still looking for his killers. Perhaps some of the reasons. Another reason, of course, was the blacklisting of Muhuri and Haki Africa, some of the organizations that were key in that. Of course, they were blacklisted by the government after the Garissa attack. Let's move to other parts of the coast and take a look at what was happening there. Kwale. No one has come forward. No one has been reported to have given himself up. Now, the reason Kwale is particularly important in this one is that because in this area, about 70 local youth were reported to have been recruited to join Al-Shabaab in the past 5 years, and they were reportedly trained in Somalia by slain terror suspect Suleiman Mwayuyu and a fugitive Bilal Mwacheti. So 70 people in this area known to have been radicalized. No one is giving themselves up. The district commissioner there is saying the government is concerned by the lack of response, and we quote him here. He says, right now I am not aware that anyone has turned up for amnesty. Now, if you think this is bad, the situation is no better in Kilifi and Malindi. Kilifi County, no reports of anyone surrendering themselves, and also in Malindi. Now, these 2 areas also important because Al-Shabaab cells were believed to be behind the killings of 3 counter-terrorism officials in these areas between 2013 and 2014. Of course, the police commander, Douglas Kanja, said no one had come out to surrender. They say they know some of these young militants are believed to be in Somalia and in Kenya. Now, the situation gets a little more worrying with this piece of information. Now, you will remember that controversial raid that took place in Musa Mosque in February last year. 6 people were killed, including a police officer. This mosque was believed to be an area that was indoctrinating youth. Hundreds of youth were arrested in that one. This is where it gets shocking with this disarmament and amnesty call. The police have apparently lost contact with 29 of the youth that were arrested in that mosque raid alone. Again, Kithuka saying he believes hundreds of youth from Mombasa have joined Al-Shabaab. They're again in Mombasa and in Somalia. So these are just some of the issues that start to worry you. But with all of these things, and all of these reports that we hear about nobody surrendering themselves, right here in Nairobi, The CS Nkaiseri is optimistic and says it's been an overwhelmingly positive response. Listen to what he said earlier this week.
I can say here, the response is very positive. The response is very good. Even last night, for those who had the opportunity to watch the television, you saw a young man walking, talking, saying that I've come back and we are doing ABCD. So the response is quite high, and we are very happy. Precisely, I cannot tell you 120 have come, but I can assure you it's very positive response.
He cannot name names, and we don't know exactly how many. But if you think it's not successful, we've done a case study of where it has been successful, and that's right next door in Uganda. There was an Amnesty Act in 2000, and it was basically to deal with the rebellion from the LRA. Now, why it worked so well there was it was anchored in law, including the rehabilitation process, and it's about winning the hearts, the minds, and the stomachs of those. Now, take a look at this success story. In the 12 years since the Uganda Amnesty Act was formed, for which there was a commission, by the way, 26,288 rebels had received amnesty, and this essentially brought LRA under control. And out of those, 12,971 were LRA. They were able to bring in even other rebels. Now, one of the chief negotiators of this Amnesty Act, Dr. David Matanga, is joining John Allen Namu and his panel to discuss this further. Remember, we're looking for your feedback. The Other Kenya on Twitter. John?
That's right, Dr. David Matsanga, chief negotiator for between the Ugandan government and the LRA, is here with us in studio, as well as three other guests. I'll start with my right, Jabiki Limo, of course, a former member of parliament, now the chair of the board, the anti-FGM board, but of course here to speak about her experiences between the Marakwet and the Pokot in resolving those conflicts. They are long running conflicts. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Right next to her is, of course, a familiar face on KTN, Alamin Kimasi, human rights defender, also chairing a working group on counter-terrorism and counter-radicalization. And right next to him, Deputy Secretary General of SUPKEM, Hassan Olenadu, who is also involved in de-radicalization attempts, as well as looking at calls for amnesty. And the central question here that a number of people raised once that amnesty was extended, I'll start with you, Alamin, especially the NCCK and other quarters, was why are we putting peace before justice? Why is it that we'd rather resolve this issue by calling in people who are supposedly radicals, people who do harm to this country, and bring them into the fold rather than arrest them?
Yes, I think the consideration, the major consideration for instituting, or rather even having an amnesty call, was the fact of lack of, advancement in the processes that were going on. That the advancing, the processes were not being carried in a way that our society would feel that one, that they're getting secure, and two, that the future is guaranteed. So those two, the basic thing is that we need to feel that we are secure. Yeah. And never mind however we are going to do it, but if we are going to allow people to be given certain conditions to come back, get certain conditions, and then they give us our security, so be it.
All right. Now, Hassan, SUPKEM would have been one of the institutions that would have received some of the young men, possibly young women, who have crossed into Somalia, crossed into different parts of the world, and come back as returnees and radicalized, or have run away from those institutions. What can you speak to about the numbers of people during that amnesty period that actually came back into the fold through the hands of SUPKEM?
Thank you, Alan. I think Supreme Council have, in the first time, actually appreciated the action of government by giving this window to the majority of the young people who have joined, who have found themselves in such groups. However, the first 10 days, we realized there's not going to be achieved anything, and we did an appeal to government to extend it for a month. Within that period, SUPKEM because this is a very sensitive issue that cannot be given figures and details, has actually done quite a good job in terms of trying to deliver these young people to take advantage of the window that was given by government. And I can assure you we have done quite a good job. Yeah.
All right, and beyond amnesty, beyond the young men who Joseph Kaiseri was talking about, Dr. Matsanga coming back, do we have the infrastructure to be able to support such an amnesty call? So they come back and then what?
Yes, first of all, I think what the government of Kenya has done is a right step in the right direction. You must begin somewhere to tackle terrorism. Terrorism is not tackled by boots on the ground or heavy artillery. It is tackled in several ways. Some of us who took part in the Uganda amnesty discussions and the peace process, we had to start somewhere. And what the government has done, I thank them for thinking in that direction. But they must put legal framework. There must be a framework under which this amnesty will operate. Piecemeal amnesty of 14, 20, 30 days won't work.
Yeah.
We must first of all go back to the drawing table so that the people who are under arms, the terrorists, know that there is a framework that will safeguard them.
Yes.
Once they turn out, nobody is going to take revenge on them. You see, time comes when you must have peace, as Kimani says. We must think about what our country needs now.
All right, beyond that legal framework that you speak of, there's of course the element of trust, and I think that has come out in some of the statements that Yvonne had just presented. Jabi, let me bring you into this discussion with something that happened fairly recently, actually today. Leader of the majority, Aden Duale, goes back on a statement that he made about 30 days ago that they would be giving a list, providing a list in terms of sympathizers. Now, Duale being the leader of the majority in a government that has a super majority in a legislature, what does that say about trust, building trust in this war on terror?
It's unfortunate that he spoke the way he did. Unfortunately, I don't know what may have informed that decision, but it will erode the trust or the belief that people who may have wanted to surrender, for example, to take advantage of the amnesty that the government have given them, they can say then so nothing is happening. I feel that those who might be willing to come forward might not actually come forward because it's like business as usual.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the government has had disarmament campaigns as well as amnesty calls in other parts of the country, including the northwest, the northeast. You've dealt with conflict in that region. How effective have the disarmament and amnesty calls by the government been? Since 2010, we've had an average of one in different parts of the country for the past 5 years.
I'll go back to maybe 2003 or 2002 when I became Member of Parliament in Marakwet East. The issue of disarmament has not achieved much, especially amongst communities who practice cattle rustling, either as a hobby or because of business kind of. Why? Because they don't trust whoever is supposed to take care of them, the security provided by government. And what we did in my part of the world between the Pokot and Marakwet was to look for alternative justice system, a system that the people will believe that this is justice to me. Despite the government taking on the legal way, there must be another way where people understand that this is truly justice. In our case, somebody, for example, if you kill somebody, okay, the government will arrest that person and take him to jail. But the bereaved families, what is justice to them? And so what we came up with was the alternative mechanisms of feeling that you've been compensated for your dead person, and we agreed on 40 cows. So despite the person going to jail, the bereaved must feel justice has been given to them.
Yes.
And so what we are talking about today about the amnesty and also the people who feel that maybe they have gone to Al-Shabaab and all that, I really feel that the leaders especially the political leaders, should speak the same language with those in leadership.
Yeah, but before we go to the politics of disarmament and amnesty, disarmament itself, the process, the actual nuts and bolts of disarmament, means taking guns away from people who are shooting at each other. Isn't that an important element of this? Shouldn't that also be on the top of priorities with respect to these communities?
Yeah, that is where the politics comes in. For example, our CS in Kaiseri, yeah, it's in Nairobi, yes, and we have members of parliament from the various communities. Now, if there is no, they should not delink themselves from what Honorable Kaiseri is doing and what they do as members of parliament. That's the person they will trust is the member of parliament before they reach somebody who is the CS. So these communities then, if Kaiseri says surrender, the MPs must also go and say surrender. And what language will they understand by surrender? If it means then they are going to take us Olenado, for example, if they are taking to the mosque, then that is where they will understand. Then use the structures that those people really understand. Disarmament in my part of the world, where between Marakwet and Pokot, came first of all when we sat down and said, what are we going to do to live at peace? What are the benefits? And slowly by slowly, when people start trusting the systems that are in place, they will surrender.
Yes.
Yeah.
But who is speaking right now to the warriors, to the youth? Who are the people who are speaking to them and asking them to come into these structures? Let's just speak for a moment about the wider war on terror. Alamin, what would your involvement, for instance, be in speaking to these youth who are very vulnerable to the messaging of groups like Al-Shabaab, groups like ISIS at this point? Where do you even find these young men and women to be able to speak to them?
Personally, I have a dual role here. I mean, or rather, I have dual platforms. That I am from the civil society, the human rights sector, where we will approach them from a human rights point of view. Yeah. I mean, approach the issue. But on the other hand, I come from a community, the Muslim community, and therefore I will also institute programs within the Muslim community, outreach programs that are designed at reaching out to the target groups here. But now that's where I hark back to what JB is saying here and what you've reported earlier. Trust is of essence here.
Yeah.
That the government in the first place needs to trust those communities to be able to develop the platforms, the programs, and the mechanism itself be led by the communities. It's a very, very crucial thing.
But isn't trust also an issue, like speaking specifically about the Muslim community? And we've spoken about this on this platform before. There are so many voices, so many varied voices that claim to speak on behalf of the Muslim community. Who should a young man who doesn't want to be in Shabab anymore trust? Who should they go to?
Hassan Olenado will tell you that even when we believe that I'm not able to reach John within the community, we create a mechanism where John can be reached by a certain unit of the community that he trusts.
Yeah.
And it's worked. And we do believe, even in this instance, that is working, and it can work. I believe Hassan can speak.
Hassan, yeah, tell us about that with respect to trust. There's a CIPK, there's SUPKEM, there's NAMLEF. Who would a young person go and speak to if they've come back from say Somalia and they'd like to re-engage the community?
I'll go back, Alan, to the whole question of trust in the process of demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration. It's actually critical that the beginning of amnesty should begin in trust building. That is where amnesty becomes successful. If you look at what happens in Philippines between Moral Liberation Movement and the government of Philippines, in the negotiations, what they even agreed that moral liberation movement keep their arms. They were not even disarmed in the first place. They were told, please, if you don't trust us, keep your arms so that you take care of yourselves, but let us continue negotiation. It took a while before now these members of this other group would now decide to hand over the arms because they have realized they have achieved what they wanted.
Actually, a literal example of what can work here is sitting right here with us. Dr. Masanga, let me just bring you back into this discussion. With the LRA and building trust over such a long period, how, first of all, was that able to work? And then, secondly, these are young men and women who have been indoctrinated in a certain way to think of, say, the government as the enemy, say other people as the enemy, as with Al-Shabaab. How important is that process coming on the back of building trust between the government, say, and the group that we're discussing?
First of all, let's see what type of terrorism is in Kenya. Because we might be talking about general terrorism. The one that is in Kenya is rented, according to me. The little I know about security is rented terrorism. They're a bigger cell outside ordering a smaller cell to operate into Kenya. Another type of terrorism that we see is the usual traditional cattle rustling that Madam Chilimo Honorable has talked about. But the case of LRA, first, the government of Uganda gave incentives. What do they want to gain when they surrender? We laid down the incentives. We laid down the going back to schools. We laid down giving, you see, no punishment, no to the families, nothing, reparations, with transitional justice, which I am part of. I like transitional justice. I'm not part of retributive justice. That's why you see me fighting every day about taking people to jail. But look at this. The LRA, some of these people are not willing participants. Some of them are just even in the terror groups of Al-Shabaab. Some were taken thinking they were going for a holiday, and they ended up there. And they are trained to come back and kill. So look at the number of people who have gone. We looked at it from that background and said, if we now blanket the LRA and the government of Uganda continues to fight every year for 23 years, they had been fighting this. We said, let's lay down, one, the structures, two, the trust. We brought in the bishops, we brought in the sheikhs, we brought in the cardinals, we brought in elders, we brought in paramount chiefs. And that is very, very important, that the local community itself
is able to
one of the things that we have, which is different from this place, is that that's why you see Karamojongs today can also grow tomatoes and export the tomatoes to Kampala, as we call it, because they use only to cattle rustle. We have done that. There is a mechanism of saying, bring your guns, we shall bring you the horse. Bring your guns, we shall give you something. You must have a system of three, which they call the head, the heart, and the stomach. This must begin there, because some of these people were taken there they found themselves in or under a gun that you must be here. If you live here, you'll be killed.
Nonetheless, there are people within these organizations, the LRA, the Al-Shabaab, who have committed massive atrocities that people would not be able to understand within the context of amnesty. Where do you draw the line? What caliber of person would you be able to give amnesty? Say a Joseph Kony, or
heinous crimes. Heinous crimes. Even the Kony crimes, according to the Amnesty Act of Uganda, if Kony had surrendered within the time we framed that we are deput, he was supposed to come back, be under house arrest in Uganda, perform rituals. Clans, there are people who lost their families, and he would go back. We put there the actually traditional healing process, where you jump the egg, and then this clan comes back to pay the cows to this clan because of killings.
Within the context of terror, I understand that it works there, because this was a fairly different sort of indoctrination between the LRA and what's happening with Shabab. Someone like Ahmad Iman, someone who's a communications expert for Shabab, as has been told to us by security, is a person who not only is indoctrinated himself, but has indoctrinated lots of people. And terrorism itself, as terrorism as a phenomenon is rather different. It's fairly different to that. Al-Amin and Hassan, maybe you can speak on this. How then do you pull a person who's been radicalized religiously, because that's a far stronger opiate? How do you pull someone back who's been radicalized religiously into the fold? What is that one or two or three things that you can do? Hassan, maybe we can start with you.
Absolutely. I think there is actually nothing that we can think that we cannot do in terms of addressing this problem. The indoctrination process is based on the scriptures that exist, the same scriptures as all of us believe in. It's about giving proper interpretation and meaning to those scriptures to ensure that those people who misread the scriptures have the right reading. And it's normally a process that happens in many occasions. When somebody changes his faith to another faith, that is the same process. So to us, I think it's really not a big problem, because we have scholars in large numbers in this country who can actually do exactly that, to ensure that they give the positive message to these young people. Let us not forget one thing about the root causes of the problem. You know, when the doctrines are being used, they are used based on something. That what we need to be thinking as a country is, how do we deal with those issues that the narrative is being built around those particular issues. For example, when you have the issue of the national identity cards that every now and then you hear Muslims complaining about, how can the Kenya government, for example, develop clear policies that address the question of identity cards, so that we deny those who want to recruit our youth that narrative? We address the issue of the land question, for example, and the cost, because when you see the people being recruited, they are recruited based on circumstances they are living in, and the narrative is built based on the same circumstances. So I think as we look at the ideology, we also need to be looking at the narrative.
And part of that narrative, Al-Amin, is the actual fighting of the war on terror. Many allegations of extrajudicial killings being given as a claim by Al-Shabaab as the reason why, number one, they should strike back, and number two, a claim that is now being modified, that they should claim Muslim lands in the north. How then, within the actual nuts and bolts of fighting the war on terror, can Kenya change and be able to lend itself to something that would allow for amnesty to take place?
The one thing that I believe needs to be done is for the law to be seen to be taking its due course. Due process must be seen to be happening. And we have so many cases even going on, some cases which are openly unprosecutable, cases that ought not to be in court. Those ones really need to be tackled as fast as possible. You know, if you are talking of a lot of youth being incarcerated in places in police precincts or in prisons, then they should be brought before court and their cases be dealt with. At least that will send a very strong message that we deal with you the same way we deal with the rest of the people. And therefore, the violations that that part of the narrative points to is that the violations of the rights of the people, and those will be seen to be tackled. If we go on also and go into issues of policy, like what my brother here is pointing out, there has even been a government report. The Sharawi Commission committee report. Government should at least be seen to be tackling some of those issues, which send the messages to those youths that, oh, things are changing, and things will change. You've been hard. You are being hard.
All right, JB, I'll give you the last word here. First, you can contribute, of course.
I wanted to contribute to what they have said. People also need to feel appreciated. The government must come up with ways of showing the people in Northeastern that they are not marginalized, they are part of Kenya. The youth in Mombasa, even those who feel their lands have been taken away, the government must take an affirmative action to show by actions. They speak louder than words, to show that they are appreciated. Marakwet were in that position before I became MP in 2003. We felt that we were left by the KANU regime, and that's how I came in through DP. But when I came then, the government, and I really want to appreciate the government of President Kibaki, showed the Marakwets that they were not marginalized, they are loved. For example, the way they would treat their member of parliament. One of the first days when I became MP was I was given a chopper to go back home in a chopper. So I learned, and they said, oh, so you mean our member of parliament can come like this by government, and you keep on selling the government policies, telling them that, you know, these are the plans the government is thinking. Let them know that the government is thinking about them.
And it is these things, of course, that will be able to help build trust.
Yes.
Do you think that the recent conflict in Nadome is spun out of a fact of there being that lack of understanding that the people in Nadome, the people in Moyale, the people in different parts of this country are part of Kenya?
No, I feel they don't feel they are part of Kenya. They feel they are out there in the bush, there's something happening in town, and they are separate. They need to feel they are part of us, the rest of Kenyans.
All right, Jabi Kilimo, unfortunately this is where we're going to have to end it this evening. Lots to discuss. Very tantalizing discussion, very tantalizing topic to be able to get into the nuts and bolts of, but unfortunately that's where we'll leave it. Jabi Kilimo, thank you very much for joining us this evening, as well as you, Alamin, and Hassan Olenado, as well as you, Dr. David Matsanga. Very interesting perspectives from Uganda with respect to amnesty and disarmament. Something that, of course, is being considered quite heavily here in Kenya, and perhaps also within the East African region, that is facing a new and very dangerous enemy in terrorism, in the Al-Shabaab. But of course, the discussions that we have here always have a point with regard to where they are going. What it is that we are trying to resolve here is a question on disarmament and amnesty. Are we doing the right things? Have we done things wrong in the past? And where can we correct our wrongs and be able to move forward? Yvonne Okwara has been following this discussion. Of course, she has a few points on the same. Yvonne.
Thank you, John, for that discussion. Now, what is the point tonight? All of this talk about amnesty must move from statements that are made in the capital and be more inclusive in terms of taking a look at everybody on the ground, speaking to community leaders, religious leaders. Not only must it be inclusive, it must also be structured, as happened in Uganda and other societies and communities where it has worked, structured in law. Promises that are made in terms of rehabilitation of the youth. What exactly is that incentive that is being promised to the youth? It comes across as an amorphous promise for rehabilitation. But what is this that will so incentivize these youth who've been radicalized to lay down their arms for an alternative form or way of life? It needs to be structured, it needs to be inclusive. Different communities have different ways of solving issues at their community level. So it needs to trickle down in that regard. And as we have seen today, amnesty is just one of the tools that can be used to fight terror. It's not just about boots on the ground, it's not just about intelligence, but this is one of those methods that can be used together with all others in the war against terror. Finally, as was said by one of the panelists today, winning the hearts and the minds. And what about the stomachs? What about the idea of giving youth a possible and clear alternative? Like they talked about, it's not just about rehabilitating the youth and giving them alternative skills so as to lay down their arms. There also has to be an issue of reparation for those who are the victims of terror. Perhaps that way, when it's more inclusive, not just the ex-combatants, but also the victims of their actions, this might be one of those that we use in the fight against terror in the long term, as all our other methods are proving to still remain futile in the war against terror. That tonight is the point. Right now, the KTN crew today hit the streets to meet fans during a roadshow across Nairobi. This initiative was aimed at promoting several shows that air on KTN and to enable fans meet their celebrities and hosts. The roadshow started at the Taj Mall, then moved to Moja, Huruma Estate, Githurai, and finally Roysambu.
Tunasema asante sana kwa kutusikiza. Ni wachinje, ni wakware na ni walame. Na hakuna mahali mtanipeleka. Wacha nikwambie kitu moja by the way. Karibia hapa. Talk to me. Unajua mimi ni socialite When is social? When is social? Socialite. Social. Wacha nikwambie wewe nitakuingisha nini kwa nyumba. Na nikufungie. Wacha nikwambie. Talk to me. Nimejua watu wako na pesa. Yes. Baby, wamama wote, sio kitu wa mama, wasichana wote wanapenda pesa, unajua? Kila mtu lazima ukae vizuri, lazima ukae nini na vitu kama hizo. So, ukitaka kujua mtu ako na pesa, msichana kama uko na mwanaume wako unataka kujua kama ako na pesa, mfuate kwa ATM. Ngoja anasema anaweza kuingiza box. Mimi wacha nikwambie, hakuna box inaweza toshea. Labda paper bag. Nini hapa? Oh my god. Mimi ni mama yenu, mnasikia? Na kama unanuka makwapo usiinue mkono juu. Kimtu kimengangana kuinua mkono juu na kinanuka makwapa. That's it, kila
An action-packed and sporty day. It has been a very good evening and welcome to today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Today we start on the track where Commonwealth Games 5,000 meter champion Mercy Cherono clinched the women's 1,500 meters race. And that's on the final day of the Athletics Kenya field leg track and field event. Asbel Kiprop, who set the stadium record during the heats on Friday, did not participate in the finals since he had to travel to the Point Foynet Classic, which is scheduled for the United States. Our very own Aline Washira now reports.
The hunger to showcase their talent before their adoring supporters saw a record 210 athletes register for the men's 5,000 meters race at the Athletics Kenya track and field meeting at the Kipchoge Keino Stadium in Eldoret, forcing organizers to look for device ways of determining the best three. Elijah Kipchirchir, who had the best time from the 7 heats, was declared winner. The two of the weekend meetings saw sprinters steal the limelight from their long-distance counterparts. Joyce Zachary of Kenya Police wrapped up a double after winning both the 400 meters and 200 meters races.
My body is responding well. Yeah, I'm happy for that.
Africa Junior silver medalist Alex Sampao bagged the 400 meters title after beating Commonwealth champion Mark Mutai to second before helping his team scoop the 4x400 meters accolades. After a third-place finish at the Thika weekend meeting and a second-place finish in Nakuru, Africa Junior silver medalist Marion Kibor showed no respect to her seniors in the 3,000 meters steeplechase race. Kibor won the water and barrier race in 10 minutes 1.4 seconds.
Mara yangu ya ine kukimbia 3,000 meters steeplechase. But niko na furaha kwenye nimekimbia leo because nilikuwa nafanya mazoezi kila siku nikisema World Championship.
World 3,000 meters steeplechase champion Ezekiel Kemboi was among other elite athletes who attended the athletics championships, though as a spectator. The large number of participants and spectators has forced the Central Rift Athletics Kenya officials to request the national office to consider holding the national championships at the Kipchoge Keino Stadium.
It has been overwhelming, but all in all, we've managed up to where we are.
The successful completion of the last Athletics Kenya track and field weekend meeting here at the Kipchoge Keino Stadium in Eldoret signals the beginning of the Disciplined Forces Athletics Championships and eventually the National Championships, as well as the national trials for the World Athletics Championships in Beijing. Lynn Washira, KTN.
The Kenya national rugby 15 team is looking to climb the world rankings with victories over Portugal and Spain in the upcoming friendly matches. Kenya, who lost the African Cup title to Namibia last year, wants to qualify for the African Cup Championships. Our very own Robinson Okenya reports from the team's training camp in Madaraka.
It is very easy to draw comparisons between the national 15s and 7s rugby teams, though their competitions vary in more ways than one. But one will be forgiven for opining that the 15s team has been in the shadows of their 7s counterparts for a while now. The 15-a-side team is ready to step and be counted on its own as it seeks to qualify for the African Cup Championships that will be held later in the year. Ranked 32nd in the world, Kenya last won the Africa Cup in 2013 before losing it to Namibia last year. The team is now focused on getting back to the helm of African rugby, but first is their friendly encounter with Portugal this weekend, a match which they are determined to win despite the underdog tag.
You cannot improve as a side if you want to play weaker teams. You've got to now, if you are to play with the big boys, then definitely you've got to also knock on the big stage.
You can't let a visitor come to your house and then dictate what they want to eat, what they want to do in your house and then leave. So for me, I believe we're giving them a run for their money.
The injection of fresh blood into the team is in one way futuristic, but immediate results are desirable heading into the qualifiers.
Why we are working so hard, we need to give Kenyans something to smile about. We want to win the Africa Cup.
The game is not going to be easy. That's why we put a lot of time into training and hard work into training. So we expect good results after the game.
Kenya take on Portugal on Saturday before heading out to Harare for the African qualifiers on the 13th of June and 28th of June against Tunisia. Before Kenya plays Portugal in an international friendly here at Nairobi, these men are putting in more work to ensure the Kenya 15 side bags more glory. Robinson Okenya, KTN Sports.
And with that, we wind up for today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Keep it KTN.
All right, so tonight in our discussion that we had earlier, we were asking you whether you believe Kaiseri's amnesty call has been successful. Here's what you had to say. Robert Atuta on Twitter says, I think it hasn't. They have no confidence in the government. Idris Mukhtar, disarming communities has been taking place for a long time. Where do they get the weaponry back, I wonder? Innocent Oleche says, not really. That amnesty period was short and many youth feared arrest. Doreen McKenna on SMS watching us from Githurai 44, you say to curb insecurity, the youth should be given priority in society. Here's another one from Rhoda Kambale. You say, I agree with Jabi. The youth should be spoken to in the places of recruitment by people they trust, an issue of trust. I want to go through as much as we can. James Lokwale, why has it been difficult for Kenya to adopt the Uganda Karamoja disarmament model? Titus Moy, I agree with the panel. Government needs to build trust and have a planned strategy of amnesty. Finally, Wangeshi Kingori, government needs to borrow a leaf, if not the whole tree, from Dr. Matsanga on amnesty. He's an expert.
Here's someone who disagrees with the panel. Mohammed Tidida says fighting insecurity through amnesties is the weakest of strategies. Criminals should be pursued, arrested and eliminated. So he has a very direct boots on the ground approach. Roy Gatai says northeastern leaders know the criminals, but they are their paymasters who they need to remain in office, and that of course in reference to some of the statements tonight. There's lots also coming out on our hashtag Duale Changes Tune. That of course will be the subject of a lot of reporting here at KTN and of course across the media space with respect to whether he should apologize, what his statement meant and how it affects the war on terror,
or whether he should actually just give us that list rather than apologize.
Yes.
All right, yeah, so getting a lot of feedback on that. Can't get into it, but thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your SMSs. Thank you for your tweets. We'll see you tomorrow night, but before that, Russia Russia's up next. No?
And on Russia Russia tonight, we've got 4 extra people who are going to be dancing with the people of Russia Russia, dancing for your votes, I believe. The 4 finalists from the presenter are on Russia Russia tonight, so catch them. Your favorites, whoever they are, catch them, watch them, vote for them, because the finale is up pretty soon.
Yeah, it is. So watch that. Vote for your favorite. 22840 is that number. Send the name of your favorite contestant to that number, and let's see who wins and who gets to join us right here on KTN.
And before I forget, tomorrow 7 p.m. Ubaraduli wa Ardhi, a piece that Zubeida Kome has been working for quite some time. Very interesting insights about land. You want to know the story about land just a few days before Madaraka? Watch Ubaraduli wa Ardhi tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Good night.
This is KTN. Welcome home.